Hey everyone, ready for a deep dive into something really fascinating?
I am.
Today we're going to be exploring the world of spirituality
Okay.
and the brain.
That's interesting.
And trust me, it's a lot more exciting than it might sound at first.
You're right.
We're going to be taking a deep dive into an interview
Okay.
with Dr. Andrew Newberg. And he's a neuroscientist who's making waves in this field
Right.
called neurotheology.
Neurotheology.
You ever heard of that?
I haven't. What is that?
They probably haven't.
Okay.
It's a pretty specialized area.
I see.
Basically, Dr. Newberg is using brain scans
Interesting.
to study what happens in our brains during spiritual experiences.
Yeah.
He's trying to understand what's going on up there
Yeah.
when people feel that sense of awe or wonder or connection to something bigger than themselves.
I see.
It's like being able to peek behind the curtain
Right.
and see the mechanics of those moments that feel so personal and profound.
Yeah.
So before we get into the nitty-gritty of brain scans and lobes and all of that, let's talk about what we even mean when we say spiritual.
Okay.
It's one of those words that gets thrown around a lot, but it can be hard to define.
Yeah, for sure.
What do you think?
Yeah. You're absolutely right. It can be a bit slippery.
Yeah.
Dr. Newberg acknowledges that those two words, spiritual and religious, often get used kind of interchangeably.
Right.
But he sees them as distinct.
Okay.
Religion usually involves, specific traditions and communities. Think about churches or temples or mosques.
Right.
But spirituality, on the other hand,
Yeah.
is more about a personal connection to something greater than oneself.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So for someone who finds, a deep sense of peace walking in the woods,
Yeah.
that could be considered a spiritual experience,
For sure.
even if they don't subscribe to any particular religion.
Exactly. It's all about that feeling of connection to something vast and mysterious. Whether it's nature or art or music or even humanity as a whole or even a higher power.
Yeah.
Dr. Newberg emphasizes that there's no one-size-fits-all definition here.
I really appreciate that open approach. It acknowledges that these experiences are incredibly personal.
Yeah.
They're unique to each individual. But how does he actually study something that's as subjective as a spiritual experience?
Yeah.
I mean, can you really measure that kind of thing?
Well, that's a great question. And that's where the neuro part of neurotheology comes in.
Right.
Dr. Newberg uses brain imaging technology like MRI and even nuclear medicine to observe what's happening in people's brains while they're engaged in spiritual practices.
That sounds pretty high tech.
It is.
Can you break that down a little bit?
Yeah. So think of it as capturing a snapshot of the brain in action.
Okay.
It involves injecting a tiny amount of a radioactive tracer.
Okay.
And it's attracted to areas of high brain activity. So as someone engages in a spiritual practice, the scanner can track where that tracer is going and create images of which parts of the brain are lighting up.
So we can actually see which parts of the brain are involved in these experiences.
Yeah.
What kind of things is he finding?
So one of the key areas that he focuses on is the parietal lobe. It's the part of our brain that helps us orient ourselves in space and understand where our body ends and the outside world begins.
So it's like our brain's GPS system, keeping us grounded in reality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But here's where it gets interesting. During deep meditation or prayer activity, and the parietal lobe actually decreases.
Oh, wow. So that sense of oneness or boundless that people describe during these experiences might actually be linked to quieting down that part of the brain that normally creates those boundaries between us and the world around us.
That's what Dr. Newberg's research suggests. Imagine for a second you're walking through a forest and you feel so connected to nature that you lose track of where you end and the trees begin.
Yeah.
That blurring of boundaries is what Dr. Newberg is seeing reflected in the brain scans.
That's pretty mind-blowing.
It is.
I've definitely had moments like that hiking in the mountains where I felt completely absorbed by the beauty around me and kind of lost myself in the experience.
Yeah.
So it's not just a feeling. There's something measurable happening in the brain.
Exactly. And it's not just the parietal lobe that's involved.
Okay.
He also found that the limbic system, which is our brain's emotional center, plays a crucial role in these experiences as well.
That makes sense because spiritual experiences are often accompanied by intense emotions. Like joy or awe or love.
Exactly.
So the limbic system is responsible for processing those emotions.
Yes.
And creating those vivid memories. That's right.
That stay with us long after the experience is over.
It's like those moments get etched into our brains in a more powerful way than everyday experiences do.
So it's not just in our heads.
Right.
It's literally changing the way our brains are wired.
Yeah, so Dr. Newberg wanted to go beyond just the brain scans.
Okay.
He wanted to understand the subjective side of these experiences as well. So he launched an online survey where he asked thousands of people to share their personal accounts of spiritual experiences.
I bet those stories were incredible.
They are.
Did you find any common themes?
He absolutely did. Despite the vast diversity of beliefs and practices that were represented in the survey, Dr. Newberg identified 5 core elements that seem to weave their way through almost every type of spiritual experience.
Okay. I'm hooked. Tell me more about these 5 elements.
Well, the first one is unity or oneness.
Okay.
That feeling of being connected to something larger than yourself.
And remember how we talked about how the parietal lobe activity decreases during these experiences?
Right.
That might be the neurological underpinning of that sense of merging with something vast and boundless.
So the feeling of unity isn't just a metaphorical concept.
Right.
It's actually reflected in the activity of the brain.
That's what it seems like.
Wow, okay. What's the next element?
The second element is intensity.
Okay.
And it's that feeling that the experience is more real or more profound or more powerful than anything you've ever experienced before. And remember the limbic system, our emotional center.
Right.
That's likely playing a role in amplifying those feelings and making those memories so vivid and long-lasting.
So it's like those moments get imprinted on our souls in a way that everyday experiences don't.
That's a good way to put it.
What about the third element?
So that would be clarity.
Okay.
It's a sudden sense of understanding or insight or revelation, like a light bulb going off in your head. Dr. Newberg believes this might involve the thalamus, which acts like the grand central station of our brains.
Right.
It relays information between different areas. He also found some research showing increased sensitivity to serotonin and dopamine in people who regularly engage in spiritual practices.
Serotonin and dopamine.
Yeah.
Aren't those the neurotransmitters that are associated with happiness and well-being?
They are.
So these experiences might be actually changing our brain chemistry in a positive way.
It seems that way.
Wow.
And it might explain why so many people report feeling a sense of peace or clarity or joy after having a spiritual experience. It's like a mental and emotional reset.
This is incredible. It's like we're starting to uncover these hidden mechanisms of these experiences that have been shrouded in mystery for so long.
Right.
Okay. I can't wait to hear about the last 2 elements.
So the fourth one is surrender.
Okay.
It's that feeling of letting go of control and allowing the experience to unfold without resistance.
So during these moments of surrender, the part of our brain that's usually in charge of planning and analyzing and making decisions takes a backseat.
Exactly. It's like our inner control freak goes on vacation for a little bit.
I like that.
And finally, the fifth element is transformation.
Okay.
This refers to a lasting change in perspective or beliefs or behavior as a result of the experience.
So these experiences aren't just these fleeting moments of bliss.
Yeah.
They can actually have a ripple effect on our lives.
That's right. Imagine you have an experience that shifts your perspective so profoundly that you start to see the world in a new light.
Yeah.
Maybe you become more compassionate or more forgiving or more connected to something larger than yourself.
Okay.
That's transformation in action.
This is so fascinating. It's like we're seeing the science behind something that's traditionally been seen as very mystical or intangible. It's like the science is catching up with these ancient wisdom traditions.
Yeah.
But before we go down that rabbit hole, what happens next?
Well, Dr. Newberg's research doesn't stop there. In fact, he points out that these 5 elements don't just apply to those big, life-altering moments of spiritual awakening.
Hold on. There's more.
You telling me there's more?
Yes.
I can't wait to hear what else he's uncovered.
All right.
But before we dive into that, let's take a quick pause. All right, so we're back, and I'm ready to hear more about these 5 elements. You were saying they don't just apply to those big, dramatic spiritual moments.
That's right. Have you ever felt a sense of complete absorption, like when you're working on a project you love, or just being totally present when you're playing with a child?
Oh, absolutely. Those moments where you lose track of time and you feel completely in the flow.
Exactly. Dr. Newberg says those moments can also be seen as spiritual experiences.
Really?
They might not involve visions or mystical revelations or anything like that.
Right. But they tap into those same core elements. A sense of unity, intensity, clarity, surrender.
Right.
And even like a subtle shift in perspective afterwards.
So we don't have to climb a mountain or go on a silent retreat to experience these things?
Not at all. They're woven into the fabric of our daily lives.
Okay.
Dr. Newberg even gives the example of a police officer directing traffic.
Police officer.
With a sense of joy and complete engagement.
I wouldn't think of directing traffic as a particularly spiritual activity.
Right. But think about it. That officer found a way to bring those 5 elements, unity, intensity, clarity, surrender, transformation, to a seemingly mundane task.
Right.
He was present in the moment, connected to his surroundings, and finding a sense of purpose in what he was doing.
So it's all about perspective.
It is.
It's about finding those moments of transcendence in the everyday.
Yeah.
But I feel like so many of us get stuck in routines and thought patterns that keep us feeling disconnected and uninspired.
Right.
How do we break free from that and tap into those more expansive experiences?
That's a great question. Dr. Newberg actually addresses this in his work. He explains it in terms of neural pathways.
Okay.
Those are like well-worn grooves in our brains that get created when we repeat the same thoughts and behaviors over and over.
So we're creatures of habit.
We are.
And those habits can keep us trapped in a rut, even if it's not serving us.
Exactly. But here's the good news.
Okay.
Our brains are incredibly adaptable.
Yeah.
We can create new neural pathways and even weaken those old ones by consciously changing our thoughts and behaviors.
So we have the power to rewire our own brains.
That's right.
But where do we start? It can feel so overwhelming to even know where to begin.
Dr. Newberg suggests starting with small, intentional changes.
Okay.
He encourages people to try new activities, connect with different people, cultivate a willingness to see things from a fresh perspective.
So it's about shaking things up a bit, stepping outside our comfort zones, and inviting in new experiences.
That's right. It's like my sister-in-law. She was feeling really unfulfilled, and she decided to start volunteering in a local animal shelter.
Wait, you have a sister-in-law?
I do.
Who's like a secret animal whisperer. Tell me more.
Well, she's always loved animals, but she never considered volunteering before.
Okay.
But once she started spending time with the animals there and seeing how much joy it brought her, it was like something shifted within her.
So trying something new led to an unexpected sense of purpose and connection.
Absolutely. And she started to see the world differently, too. She became more aware of the interconnectedness of all beings and developed a deeper sense of empathy for animals and humans alike.
That's a beautiful example of how even small changes can have a ripple effect on our lives. And it reinforces what we were talking about earlier. Those 5 elements aren't just reserved for these mystical experiences.
That's right.
They can show up in the most unexpected places.
You're getting it. And that's what's so empowering about Dr. Newberg's message. It's not about achieving some lofty state of enlightenment. It's about those small daily practices that help us cultivate a more expansive and fulfilling way of being in the world.
Okay, I'm feeling inspired, but I have to admit I'm still a little bit skeptical.
Okay.
What's the actual evidence that cultivating a more spiritual life can actually make a real difference in our lives?
Well, this is where Dr. Newberg's background as a medical doctor really comes into play. He points to a growing body of research that suggests a strong link between spiritual practices and improved physical and mental well-being.
Really? You're saying there's scientific evidence to back this up?
For example, numerous studies have shown that people who regularly engage in spiritual practices, like meditation or prayer, tend to have lower levels of stress hormones like cortisol.
That makes sense when we're feeling connected to something larger than ourselves.
Right.
It helps put our problems in perspective and reduce those feelings of overwhelm.
Exactly. And the benefits go beyond just stress reduction.
Oh.
Studies have also linked spiritual practices to improved immune function.
Really?
Lower blood pressure.
Wow.
And even a reduced risk of certain chronic diseases.
So we're not just talking about feeling better emotionally.
Right.
We're talking about actual physical changes in the body.
Yeah. And there's also evidence that spiritual practices can have a positive impact on mental health as well. Studies have shown that people who engage in these practices are less likely to experience symptoms of anxiety and depression. And they report higher levels of overall life satisfaction.
So we're talking about feeling calmer, more resilient, and more content with life.
It's not a magic bullet, of course, but the evidence is pretty compelling.
Yeah.
And beyond those physical and mental benefits, there's also the profound impact that spirituality can have on our sense of meaning and purpose.
That's something that I've been struggling with lately, feeling like my life lacks direction.
I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah.
And Dr. Newberg suggests that by connecting to something larger than ourselves, whether it's a higher power or nature or humanity as a whole, we tap into a source of meaning and purpose that transcends our individual ego.
It's like we're finding our place in this grand scheme of things, recognizing that we're part of something much bigger and more meaningful than just our own individual lives.
Exactly. And that realization can be incredibly liberating and empowering.
Wow.
It can give us a sense of direction or motivation and hope, even in the face of life's inevitable challenges.
This is all starting to make more sense now. It's like all these pieces of the puzzle are fitting together, the science, the personal experiences, and the potential benefits. But how do we actually make this happen in our own lives? How do we cultivate that sense, spirituality, amidst the chaos of our daily routines and responsibilities?
That's a great question, and it's one that Dr. Newberg addresses head-on in his work. He offers some very practical advice for bringing those 5 core elements into our everyday lives.
Okay, I'm all ears. Give me the inside scoop. How do we make this happen? Okay, I'm ready for action. What are the practical steps? What's the how-to guide for infusing my life with more of that spiritual goodness?
Well, first things first, it's all about awareness.
Okay.
Dr. Newberg suggests paying attention to those moments when you feel a spark of joy or connection or a sense of purpose.
Okay.
It's like being a detective of your own inner world, noticing those subtle shifts in energy and awareness.
So it's not about forcing these big, dramatic experiences. It's about tuning in to those smaller moments that already exist in our lives.
Exactly. Maybe it's that feeling of awe when you look up at a starry sky, or a sense of deep peace while you're listening to your favorite music. It could even be like a surge of creativity when you're working on a project you love.
It's about recognizing those moments when we feel truly alive and connected, and then trying to figure out what triggered those feelings.
Right. And as you start paying attention, you'll begin to notice patterns.
Okay.
Maybe being in nature consistently brings you a sense of peace, or maybe certain types of music evoke a feeling of transcendence.
It's like we're creating a personalized map of our own spiritual landscape.
That's beautiful.
We're identifying those places and activities that nourish our souls.
And once you have that map, you can start making conscious choices. To incorporate more of those experiences into your life.
So if I realize that spending time in nature is my jam, I might make it a priority to go on hikes or walks in the park more regularly.
Exactly. Or if listening to certain types of music really lifts your spirits, you might create a playlist specifically for those moments when you need a boost.
It's about being intentional about it, creating those opportunities for connection and inspiration.
It is.
But life gets busy.
It does.
How do we actually make time for this stuff? Amidst all the other demands, work, family, all those other responsibilities.
That's real. You know, that's something that Dr. Newberg addresses as well. He emphasizes that it doesn't have to be complicated or time-consuming. Even small 5-minute rituals can make a big difference.
5 minutes. Okay, that feels much more doable. What kind of 5-minute rituals are we talking about here?
Well, it could be as simple as starting your day with a few deep breaths. Or focusing on gratitude for a few minutes before you go to bed. Or even just taking a moment to appreciate the beauty of a flower.
On your walk to work.
I love that. It's about weaving those little moments of mindfulness and connection into the fabric of our everyday lives.
Exactly. And remember that police officer we were talking about before who found joy in directing traffic? It's about bringing that same level of presence and intention to whatever we're doing, whether it's washing the dishes or folding laundry or even sitting in traffic.
You know, I've been trying to incorporate more mindfulness into my daily routine, but sometimes it feels like a struggle. My mind just wants to race ahead to the next thing on my to-do list.
You're not alone in that. One of the biggest challenges of mindfulness is learning to quiet that inner chatter and simply be present in the moment.
How do we actually do that? Are there techniques that can help us tame that monkey mind?
So Dr. Newberg recommends a variety of different practices, but here are a few that I found particularly helpful.
Okay.
First, there's meditation.
And don't worry, you don't have to become a Zen master or anything.
Oh, phew, that's a relief.
Even just 5 minutes of sitting quietly, focusing on your breath can have a world of difference. And there are tons of guided meditations available online and through apps these days that can help you get started.
So it's about finding a style of meditation that works for you and committing to practicing it regularly.
Exactly. And the more you practice, the easier it becomes to access that state of calm and presence.
Okay.
Another powerful technique is gratitude.
Gratitude. That sounds almost too simple. How can that make a difference?
Well, it might sound simple,
but
the effects are actually really profound. Research has shown that when we focus on what we're grateful for, it actually shifts our brain chemistry.
Really?
Releasing those feel-good neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin.
So it's like giving our brains a happiness boost.
Exactly. And it also helps to shift our perspective. Instead of dwelling on what's wrong or what we're lacking, we start to focus on the good things in our lives, on all the abundance that's already present.
I could see how that would be a powerful antidote to negativity and stress. Any tips for cultivating more gratitude?
So one simple practice is keeping a gratitude journal.
Okay.
Each day, just write down 3 to 5 things you're grateful for, no matter how small. It could be anything from a delicious cup of coffee to a warm, sunny day.
Yeah, that's a great idea. It doesn't even have to be limited to a journal, right?
Right.
We can express gratitude to others. Savor those moments of joy. Appreciate the beauty that surrounds us.
Exactly. And as we cultivate gratitude, we start to see the world through a different lens. We become more aware of the blessings in our lives. And less focused on what's missing.
Okay, I'm definitely adding gratitude to my spiritual toolkit.
Good.
What other practices does Dr. Newberg recommend?
Another one that he emphasizes is cultivating awe.
Awe. You mean that feeling of wonder and amazement?
Yes.
That we experience when we see something vast and extraordinary?
Yes. Think about the last time you gazed up at a star-filled sky.
Yeah.
Or stood in awe of a towering mountain, or witnessed a breathtaking sunset.
Those experiences always leave me feeling humbled and connected to something much bigger than myself.
Exactly. And those are the feelings that we're trying to cultivate. Research has actually shown that experiencing awe can actually expand our sense of time.
Really?
Makes us feel like we have more time and space.
That's incredible.
In our lives.
It's like those moments of awe stretch our perception of reality. And allow us to see the world with fresh eyes.
And that shift in perspective can be incredibly liberating. It helps us let go of our worries. Appreciate the beauty around us and feel more connected to the present moment.
So how do we cultivate more awe in our lives? Do we have to book a trip to the Himalayas or wait for the next meteor shower?
Not necessarily. Awe can be found in the everyday if we know where to look. It might be as simple as taking a moment to appreciate the intricate details of a flower, watching a bird in flight, or listening to a piece of music that moves you deeply.
It's about slowing down, paying attention, and allowing ourselves to be captivated by the beauty and wonder that surrounds us.
I love that. And you know what? I think I'm starting to understand the connection between all of this and creativity. When we're in that state of awe, it sparks our imaginations.
It does.
It opens us up to new possibilities.
That's a great insight. And Dr. Newberg actually encourages people to nurture their creativity as a pathway to spiritual connection.
That makes sense. When we're engaged in a creative activity, whether it's painting or writing or dancing or even gardening, we often lose track of time.
We do.
And feel this sense of joy and purpose. Exactly. And it's not about being a good artist or writer or dancer or anything. It's really about the process of creating. Of expressing ourselves authentically. And connecting with that source of inspiration that flows through us.
It's about tapping into that innate human desire to create, to bring something new and beautiful into the world.
And in doing so, we often tap into something much larger than ourselves. A force that transcends our individual ego and connects us to that infinite creative potential that exists within us and all around us.
This has been such an enlightening conversation. You've given me a whole new toolbox of practices and techniques I can use to cultivate a more spiritual life.
That's wonderful to hear. Yeah. And remember, it's not about trying to do everything at once. Just start with 1 or 2 practices that resonate with you and see how they feel.
It's about finding what works for us.
Yeah.
And creating a practice that feels authentic and sustainable.
Exactly. Yeah. And remember, this is a lifelong journey. There will be ups and downs, moments of clarity and moments of confusion.
It's about being patient with ourselves.
Yeah.
Trusting the process and embracing the mystery of it all.
Beautifully said. And as we continue to explore and deepen our connection to the spiritual dimension of life, we open ourselves up to a world of possibility and meaning and joy.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and insights with us today. This has been truly transformative.
It's been my pleasure. And to all our listeners out there, remember, you are not alone on this journey. There are countless others who are seeking and exploring and discovering the richness and beauty of a life infused with spirit.
So keep diving deep, keep asking questions, and keep trusting the unfolding of your own unique spiritual path. Until next time, keep seeking those moments of connection that make life truly worth living.